Where are you going to?
Yeah, a bunch. So y'all are gonna have to carry your weight.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
well, I would think. Well, I don't know. Well, like that very well. That's good. Well, here obviously, I would think
Well, I shouldn't say that.
the man behind you. I never told you about a lot of you guys. I judge that everything else. I would not qualify to judge this. I saw his name on it, and I said, oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Please
Garrett.
tell me now that he's not the only one that should be.
Oh, surely not.
How you guys doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
4 minutes behind.
Okay, we better go get the rest of them. I mean, we're good, you know.
Didn't do anything. I guess we could have went out. I don't know. We could open it up to you.
Oh, surely they will be here. Unless they got sick like I did last year.
This not got a free meeting. Got 4 minutes.
I tell you what, that hit me all at once. I coughed for 3 weeks.
Is that? Oh, yeah.
Whatever I had. It was like, good grief. I still have kids at school that are coughing the whole time. There's George and Larry. We're thinking it's just us two down here.
Just you two.
Yeah, yeah.
Where did they put me today? Oh, yeah.
No problem, folks. Sorry.
Well, you switched down Mary and Mike.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Mary's home ill and Mike's traveling.
Well, I can't say anything about that ill stuff. That's your stuff.
Wow.
Oh, my
We were kind of
God.
close then, weren't we?
Good evening, Mr. Clutter. How are you? I'm doing well.
I tell what I'm going to do.
Good to see you.
I guess they sell 800 bucks.
Probably better than I thought. Then I'm thinking, I don't know about that.
They
Let's
sold,
see.
they sold 800 last year. We're gonna make up 500 to Jumper House. And Zoom with 800, couple hundred bucks is a poor burger.
Oh, Lord. Now, I don't know what she does. Each kid on that team put their goal at 25 bucks.
I have
And
no
I don't
idea.
know what they do.
No, they make a lot of money doing it because we don't charge them. We got setups and they make us.
Cool. Oh, I got really tickled at our Lions Club meeting because more than one of us are friends with Anita. So we all, whatever Brady's doing.
2 seconds.
Yeah, that was
I'll do it for anybody.
Will you?
Of course. Garrett's oh yeah, we want to do upstairs. Love doing it.
We'll go ahead. That'll be the first thing
Well,
you should
then,
announce.
we don't
Is
need it
upstairs
until
is
the
better.
second Wednesday.
Garrett's in charge of sales. Trying to figure what you get.
Yes.
I will call to order the Plan Commission meeting of Monday, March 18th, 2019. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the Secretary please take roll?
Mr. Franz,
Present.
Ms. Grabanowski, Mr. Jones,
Present.
Ms. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Reinbold, Mr. Fedor,
Present.
Mr. Lewis.
Present.
We do have a quorum of 5. Any action that's voted on tonight will at least need 4 votes. If 4 votes are not received, then it's automatically continued to the next action or next meeting. In your packet, there was a set of minutes from the February 19th Plan Commission meeting. Is there any comments, additions, deletions to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. Motion carries 5-0. I do have is the petitioner for Holiday Farms present? Obviously they are. I was wondering if you would mind if we took care of the new business before taking your action? That's fine. Okay, thank you. Petitioner, we're going to then take on docket number 2019-09-Z, Sycamore Flats, 165 and 235 West Sycamore Street. Petition for zone map change to rezone approximately 4.329 acres from the VBD Urban Village Business District to the PUD Planned Unit Development Zoning District. Is the petitioner present?
Good evening, Mr. President. For the record, my name is Matt Price. I'm an attorney with Bingham Green and Abdal in Indianapolis, Indiana, with an address of 10 West Market Street.
Before you get started,
J.C. Hart.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Approximately how long do you think your presentation is going to take?
Our presentation, Chief, is 20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes. So what I'd like to do tonight is suspend the rules. Currently, the rules allow for 10 minutes discussion for both sides. So I'd like to have a motion to suspend the rules to allow for 20 minutes to both sides.
I move that we suspend the rules and move 20 minutes both sides.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Motion carries 5-0. So you have 20 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just begin by introducing our development team. You all are familiar with this proposal, familiar with this property, having dealt with it over the years in various iterations. The property itself was rezoned by the Town's Own initiative back in 2017, you may recall, from B3 to a village business district classification. And the B3 permitted outdoor business type uses, and at the time, a developer was proposing, maybe even to some people's minds threatening, a B3 type use, perhaps a used car lot or something of that nature. And so the town went forward and rezoned it as a village business district classification. And at the time, it was observed by multiple members of the Plan Commission that it was likely this matter would be back in front of them in the form of a PUD. And so after about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half of thoughtful consideration, J.C. Hart Company is tonight prepared to present its PUD, crafted to this property. Not a conceptual plan, but a plan that reflects a project that can actually be built, and we believe represents the highest and best use of the property. The property is presented with many development challenges. Portions of it are in the floodplain, requiring special considerations with regard to filling the site and handling the hydrology of the location. Those matters have been studied, reviewed, and already approved by the town of Zionsville from a engineering standpoint. So again, this is not a theoretical presentation, but it's one that reflects actual engineering and reflects how the property can actually be used.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to announce that upstairs, there is seating upstairs with sound. Is that correct, Wayne?
Yes.
There's no video or anything?
There should be video.
There's video, there's
Yeah,
video
right,
upstairs.
right.
So if you would like to go upstairs to be seated and watch this, you're welcome to do so. Okay, sorry, Matt.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It actually bought me some additional time to plug in our PowerPoint presentation. We have retained a number of different experts to craft this proposal and divided up our presentation tonight. So without further ado, let me introduce our team, and then I'll hand it off to our first presenters, and then all of us as a team are available to answer questions. First of all, from J.C. Hart Company, let me introduce the star of the show, J.C. Hart, or John Hart, excuse me, the developer. Johnny Hart as well. Thank you, Johnny. Two co-developers for the site that are both from Zionsville, longtime Zionsville residents, who really were the first to take this site under their wing and begin to study it and see what might be possible. We have Glenn Hoagie, Glenn here, Glenn in the back, and Tim Dahl. Our civil engineer is Greg Dempsey. Greg. Then our architects are Randy Sherman and Gary Weaver. And then lastly, a person who's helped us with some of the floodplain issues is Jim Reinhardt. Let me first introduce Glenn, who's going to come up and give you an overview of the site and explain kind of how the site interacts with adjoining properties, and then he'll hand it off to John.
Good evening, members of the Plan Commission. As Matt said, my name is Glenn Hoagie. I reside at 11724 Promontory Trail. That's Austin Oaks in Zionsville, with my wife Cheryl and 3 children. My business partner is Tim Dahl. He and I have worked on this project for a year and a half. He resides in Oak Ridge with his wife Deanne. All of our kids have graduated Zionsville High School. We're 20-year residents of Zionsville. We care dearly about what happens to the town and the village. We've watched development over the years. Our careers were in commercial development, mostly healthcare. We've worked together for about 30 years in that business. But being in real estate, we watch what's going on in town. In this site in particular, we've looked at and talked about for a long time. We've watched the petitions come and go, and I've always thought that we'd like to be involved in some way, shape, or form to make something good happen to this asset, to Zionsville. Obviously, as Matt mentioned, there was a lot of issues associated with the site, and we knew that. We're both civil engineers. We appreciate the difficulty that the site poses to be developed with the floodway, the floodplain, and the creek in the back. The site became available again as a result of the last petitioner not moving forward in June of 2017. At that time, Tim and I started working on the site, talking to the prior consultants, basically realizing how difficult it was going to be, nearly really quitting on the site. But walking it again and walking down to the Canterbury Farms, Canterbury Stables site, and looking at the potential and the erosion that's occurring at Eagle Creek, and learning about the trail that is supposed to be on the west side of the creek and how it eroded away, we pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps and decided to dig in and hire our own team to try to get this approved. We did not want to bring all of the folks here in this room for a land use petition if we didn't get the engineering figured out. So we spent a year doing that. And I won't bore you with the details, but as Matt said, we got approval by the town and its consultant of our concept plan, which is basically to bring fill dirt from the Canterbury Stables up to the site and bring rich topsoil back to Canterbury Stables to improve the pasture, and then also incorporate some stabilization measures on the creek, some of which are similar to what has been done by the Parks Department in other areas of the creek. And then that would allow the trail along the creek to be built and connected to our property and other trails within town. So once we figured out the site was still developable from an engineering perspective, what should it be? What would be the best asset for the town? What would have the most impact? And we read about densification of other towns, bringing population in, having the most impact economically and just improving the town. So we didn't think it was a heavy retail site because it sits so far west. The two sites closer to Zionsville are probably more likely retail than this particular location. So our focus was apartments, multifamily, and some small residential. And we confirmed that by talking to many consultants, including George Tickajohn, who is a premier apartment investor consultant here in Zionsville. And he concurred that multifamily apartments is the highest and best use for this site. Traffic is an issue. And I want to say that we appreciate both positive, for and against comments that have been made in social media. We appreciate it. That's good to get all the concerns out. Traffic is mentioned a lot. We understand flow through traffic is an issue. Traffic is great for retail. It's not great for cutting through the town and getting across town. And we don't disagree that traffic improvements should be made at this intersection to help this site and the adjacent sites be better. So with that, who's the best partner to help us develop apartments? We put out an RFP, we explained our vision, and we ultimately engaged John Hart to be our partner. Prior to making that selection, with Barbara Hanson, the property owner, we toured many properties of John's. We talked to the residents, we talked to his employees, and we got nothing but glowing responses. And since then, we couldn't be happier about our choice, and we hope that you help us welcome John to Zionsville. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm John Hart, president of J.C. Hart Company. I'm anxious to get through the presentation and show you what we think is a really strong opportunity to build a really unique property in downtown Zionsville. But I thought I would start briefly just by telling you a little bit about J.C. Hart Company. It's a family business that was formed in 1976. My father and I formed a company to have a dedicated multifamily division for our business. Since that time, we've done $750 million worth of development. Our current portfolio is 5,500 apartments in 24 different locations. That should grow to 28 locations and 6,300 apartment homes by the end of 2020. Hopefully, one of the reasons that Glenn and Tim selected J.C. Hart Company to be a partner is that we're long-term owners. We do not build and flip our projects. We build projects to own them, build high-quality communities, and we reinvest in our communities every year. So you could visit any of our 24 locations around central Indiana, West Lafayette, and Bloomington, and see firsthand the kind of quality and the care that we take to keep our properties up. We'd like to think that there's three key elements that make J.C. Hart successful. Number one, we pick great locations, like the one we're talking about tonight. We never replicate a design from one location to another. We always build a one-of-a-kind design in every new community that we build. And most importantly, we feel like we've got outstanding people that deliver excellent service to our customers. Let me start with great locations. The reason that people say in real estate, location, 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 and a lot of times people look at that as visibility, accessibility, but we like to see locations where somebody might live, and that location would extend the amenities of their lifestyle. And what better location than being on the edge of downtown in our village here, where we have people that can walk and be a part of the village. And we are at the 184 households that we're proposing, with an average income of $77,000 that our consultants said they would have. That brings close to $14 million of household income into the community, which results in somewhere between $9 and $10 million in potential spending. There's a trend all across the country for people to move back into their heart of their communities. And while many of these are millennials, there's also quite a number of these individuals that are aging baby boomers. And it's interesting to see, if you look at the demographics within a 1-mile radius of this site, that the area seems to be underserved by the millennial age group. And there's quite a few older aging baby boomers than if we look at some of the averages of our other communities. So what that tells us is that there seems to be a void on housing in the village area for serving the millennials that have left the community or looking to live back close to mom and dad. And the aging baby boomers, as they are continue to age in their current residences in the village, they haven't really had a lot of options to be able to look at downsizing their homes. And this would give them a quality housing option where they can look to sell their home, probably to one of the 184 families that live in because we're one of the best feeders in a neighborhood once we establish ourselves in the community. Every property we do is a one-of-a-kind design. We never replicate a design from one location to the other. We believe in integrating our properties into a neighborhood and make it feel like it's part of the neighborhood that it's being built within. So I think hopefully as you see what is being proposed, that you'll see we've worked really hard to create that village feel with the architectural style that we're showing you. And finally, you can have the greatest locations in the world, and you can have the best one-of-a-kind design of all time. But if you don't have outstanding people that are delivering great service to your customers, that's kind of the final link that we think really brings us our success. We're proud to say that J.C. Hart has been named a Best Places company in the state of Indiana for 8 times here just recently again. And we also participate in a lot of national online reputation surveys. Out of the top 100 communities surveyed in the United States, there were 2 Indiana communities that were on the top 100 list. They were both J.C. Hart communities. Of the 100 communities listed for the state of Indiana, 7 of the top 10 were J.C. Hart communities in online reputation. So we're very excited about the opportunity to be a part of the village, and really excited to have Randy come up and tell you about our design.
All right, we'll go to the next slide and just look at the context. This is the site overlaid on an aerial photograph. You'll see Sycamore Street to the north. Main Street is to the east with the funeral home to the right. And the former mobile home park to the south and west, which is now an approved single-family development called the Parks. So that's our context. And the big thing that we were looking at was how do we extend Main Street down Sycamore Street. And so what we've done is we've brought the building up to the street as a 2-story architecture. We've continued the idea of on-street parking, wide pedestrian-oriented sidewalks that are 8 to 10 feet wide. Some areas are larger so that we can allow for outdoor retail dining. And then looked at how we make this a mixed-use corner at the east with a ground floor storefront for the retail use with residential above. As you go mid-block, we are transitioning the use to the leasing and amenity spaces for the apartment community, which would also have storefront to the front to engage the public realm and the parking. And then as you get to the far western end of the site, since this is a transitional site on the south side of the village, we've changed the architecture to 2 stories of residential that has a foreground that's green space, And we've projected the mass of the building forward as two elements that replicate the approximate footprint of the neighboring village homes in the area. The other things we did on the site is on the east side, we wanted to break down the scale of the building, and we did that by introducing two small green courtyard spaces that the units orient towards. And the idea is to provide as many corner units as possible so that we can have windows on at least two facades of each unit and bring as much natural light in as we can. We've put the main amenity space for the residences in the center of the block, and the pool and grilling area, the active outdoor space for the residents, is internal to the site and not along the perimeter. And then to the west is the integrated parking garage structure. So we have 255 parking spaces for the 184 dwelling units inside the building. And then along Sycamore Street, the east side of the block and the south side of the block, we have 90 surface parking spaces open for the general public of downtown Zionsville. The garage will be entered from the south side. The main residential entry will be the south side of the block, and then trash is internalized in the building with compactors and will be collected off of the side streets within the block. And with this drawing here, we have an existing trail easement on the northeast corner that we've expanded our sidewalk to engage the future development of that trail with the city. And then we have a couple of potential tie-in points for the new trail that will be extended along the Eagle Creek to the south. And those will just be coordinated as the city finalizes their plans for that trail system. This is the intersection at Main Street looking west down Sycamore Street, the bank on the right, the funeral home on the left, and further down on the right, the liquor store and the Bentley car dealership. And here you can see the beginnings of the idea of the two-story storefront as a mixed-use building at the east corner. As we move in closer, we're now at 2nd Street and Sycamore Street looking west. The Bentley dealership is directly on the right. And what we were looking to do with the massing of the architecture is break the building down into 20 and 30-foot bays and create a rhythm to the street where we're maintaining the two-story height, but we're articulating the height of the building up and down, using different architectural detailing, cornice lines, breaking the roof mass so it's not one large building structure. And it's really mimicking the character of Main Street that was built over time through multiple tenants with the way we're breaking down this building. And then also reinforcing the public realm with the sidewalks, street trees, parking, outdoor dining, and lighting that matches the character of downtown Zionsville. This view is looking south down 2nd Street, the Bentley dealership's on the left. This is, again, just showing how the character and architecture mimicking the traditional storefront design that we have on Main Street. We're projecting porches and awnings over the sidewalk, similar to what is done on other parts of downtown Zionsville, so that there's a variety to the streetscape and the architecture. This is a view south down 3rd Street with the existing homes on either side shown in the foreground. And this is where you can see that we're breaking the scale of the building down differently here. It's no longer a mixed-use building. It's two-story residential, mimicking the idea of two homes at this end of the block anchored with green space. And each of these sections of the building have private entries off of porches near this green space. So this is standing at the west end of Sycamore Street looking back to the east. In the foreground, you can see the amount of landscaping and green space that we're providing as a residential setting to this end of the block. And then as we head back to the east corner of Sycamore Street, just more detail on how we're engaging the pedestrian at the street front. As we look at the east facade heading south, you can see here, this is one of the first of the two courtyards that break down the scale of the building into 3 pieces. Each of these units have a unique and special place overlooking the green space, which gives them a higher value. Each of them has outdoor balconies or patios that orient towards these spaces that we're creating. And you can see how we're wrapping the storefront as a 4-sided architecture around the corner of the building here and providing additional patio and outdoor porch space for outdoor dining. This is a view from the southeast corner of the site. The site is, as mentioned earlier, being filled, and it's still going to be coming down grade about 10 feet, another story from Sycamore Street as we head to the south. This is a view of the south of the building, which would be the main residential entry for the project. They would enter through that central space into elevators, lobbies, and the central pool courtyard. This slide is the southwest corner of the site looking north, and again showing how the two-story architecture of Sycamore Street wraps the corner on the west side and builds down grade with the public parking for the residents being accessed from the side and the south side of the building. And then this is the northwest corner with the existing trees removed so that we can see what this facade of the building looks like. And again, it's taking the two-story residential architectural character of Sycamore Street's west end, returning the corner as four-sided architecture, and heading south on the west side. And then this is a view of the central courtyard space showing the public amenities available to the residents and what that space would feel like. And then to summarize, this is just, again, reinforcing the idea that the traditional rhythm that's created with the breaking down of the scale of the facade into pieces. Each piece has a different window pattern, window rhythm, materials, color palette. So it really creates that unique richness of architecture along Sycamore Street as the southern boundary of the village. Oops. There we go. This is a project that has just started construction in Sylvania, Ohio, a suburb of Toledo, very similar to the community here in Zionsville. They, again, also have a waterfront that has a trail system that the city is developing in conjunction with this project. An example of the outdoor connection and public space that's created with that trail system for this project. This is a project under construction in Broad Ripple, showing the idea of the mixed-use building with residential above, courtyards, and then the Monon Trail system in the foreground. And this project was taken on by the village to try and help activate and create a more 24/7 character of retail along their street frontage on Broad Ripple Avenue. This project is on Mass Avenue in downtown Indianapolis. It replaced a former fire station and is providing more like uses along Mass Avenue with mixed-use retail on the ground floor, parking below, a pool courtyard in the center, and residential units. And then we have a zoning rendering on the right that was developed during the zoning design stages of the project. And the left photo was taken just a couple weeks ago of the current as-built condition, just to show you how true to the original concept the J.C. Hart communities are with their development work. Union Street Flats in downtown Westfield, two-story architecture, again, bringing residents to the downtown to help revitalize their downtown core, and how we are keeping the scale and character with the two-story architecture on each side. And then just a couple of photographs of typical interior finishes with granite countertops, wood floors, lots of windows, and the level of appliance packages and details within their units. The type of amenities they would have with their exercise facilities, pool areas, and outdoor lounge spaces and grilling areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys ran just a slight bit long, so we'll go ahead and give the public comment a comparable amount of time, which is about 25 minutes. So at this point in time, is anybody interested in making any comment on this matter? Please step forward. State your name and address. I would ask, in the spirit of kind of keeping this going, if your comment or your concern has been expressed, you may want to just reiterate that, but not go into a full-blown discussion about it. Okay. All right, and we've confirmed that the room upstairs is live now, so if you are not going to speak and want to be a little bit more comfortable watching the proceedings, you can go upstairs if you would like. With that,
Okay. Hello, my name is Jamie Reynolds. I am representing I'm the president of the Zionsville Village Residents Association. And on behalf of our membership, I would like to let you guys know that on March 14th, the village residents met with the development team of Sycamore Flats in an informational meeting pertaining to the proposed development. With the addition of 184 family residential units, the proposed project would have a significant impact on not only its immediate neighbors, but the whole village. It is the position of the ZVR membership that we respectfully request that the commission grant a continuance so that the ZVRA and the town's residents can research and review the potential impacts of the TIF extension that's being requested, along with the environmental, safety, and infrastructural changes that will be needed in order to go along with this proposal. Thank you very much.
all right, thank you.
Yes, for the record, my name is Bob Royalty, 325 South 3rd Street. I also requested the continuance, but I understand with so many people here, the need to have a discussion tonight and let these people speak against the proposal. I'd like to speak to the character of the project, specifically the question of harmony or disharmony with the neighborhood. The project is massive. And I contend it is not in harmony with the immediate 3rd and Sycamore Street neighborhood where I live. I call that that I recommend or ask for an unfavorable vote. That we have over 500 signatures on our petition from Zionsville opposing this project in its current form. There is nothing this size anywhere near the proposed site. The only comparison I could think of nearby is the Lids building on 106th Street. And in fact, I think if there's 1,000 square feet per apartment, this is more square feet than the Lids headquarters. And I think if you built Sycamore Flats next to Lids, it would not look small or out of place at all on 106th Street. And I think that's the massive character of this that does not fit in the village. The PUD training manual presented at the previous Planning Commission highlights a number of concerns, and I'm just going to mention a few that are areas of concerns for PUDs. Preserving natural amenities of the land through conservation areas and open space. Outward-facing structures should be screened to protect the privacy of the adjacent neighborhood. And in fact, the absence of buffers are cited as a problem area that bring disharmony to a PUD proposal. Under this proposal, the north and south sides of Sycamore Street would be night and day. On the north, there are single-family homes with adequate lawns and garden setbacks and space in between the houses. On the south side, a leasing office and parking spaces where there's currently a street, with apartments with no apparent setback, minimal, if any, green space in my view, and no buffer. There are no leasing offices or clubhouses in this part of the village. It is not harmonious. When we built our house 10 years ago, our neighbors knew what to expect. Zionsville has common sense zoning in the village that keeps its unique character for the residents who have chosen to invest here to make this place our home because it is the way it is. Sycamore Flats flaunts those standards. The north side is in-your-face development. It would turn Sycamore Street into a red line between harmony and disharmony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah Martini, 80 Bailey Court, Zionsville. Thank you for your time, your service to our community, and allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. As former VRA president, I just want to take the time to clarify the village residents are not against all development for this location. We know the land will be developed at some point, but we believe the development must add value to the community, to all stakeholders in the community, businesses, residents, schools, everybody. In 2016, the VRA was approached by Councilman Kevin Spies. I was president at this time. He asked the VRA to create guidelines for what development the VRA members would consider acceptable for this lot. The VRA board, myself included, its members, and the neighboring families came together to draft guidelines. The guidelines were shared with town councilors Jeff Papa, Josh Garrett, and Kevin Spies. I have the guidelines with me tonight if you would like to see them. Unfortunately, the proposed development doesn't even remotely resemble what the residents had envisioned for that space. We felt the VBD ordinance was the best ordinance for this location, and to put it simply, any proposed development should follow the VBD guidelines. In fact, the VRA was thrilled when the town changed the zoning. We know this location will be developed. We are not opposed to all development, but we are against development that does not add value to our town. And unfortunately, this development does not add value. It would destroy Zionsville's charm. It would add financial burden to our schools, and it would increase traffic problems. Please preserve Zionsville. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Michelle Schlegelmilch, and my husband and Dan and I have lived in our home at 650 West Pine for 16 years, raising our 2 children there. We hope and plan to remain there, and that home is for as long as possible. We respectfully and strongly urge the Planning Commission to reject J.C. Hart's Sycamore Flats plan for development. Many of our personal convictions have already been expressed by our neighbors at Thursday's meeting, at which we heard the development plans, and we agree with what our neighbors have said. Our desire to maintain our quality of life, support the charm of the village by seeking low-density development and presenting the residents of Zionsville traffic solution that works and reflects the needs of our town. The quality of our lives in the village of Zionsville is worth fighting for. Approving this development will irrevocably alter the personality of our town. We believe we can find a development plan that is promoting development for the town and also supports the hopes and vision of its residents for a peaceful and established community. I urge you to hear those of us who have spoken today and who will speak and not compromise, and stand firm until a development plan and traffic solution can be approved that the residents of the village and the town planners can agree on. I urge the Zionsville Planning Commission to hear their neighbors and wait. This is not the first time a development has been proposed. It will certainly not be the last. I urge you to wait until you can approve a plan that the residents of Zionsville can applaud and support. Say yes to the residents, say yes to our continued quality of life and charm of the village, and say no to increased crime, say no to increased traffic, say no to 184 apartment units and approximately no to more than approximately 300 more cars and congestion. And please say no to the current proposed development of John Hart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julia Leonard, and I live at 230 West Sycamore Street, so directly across the street from this new proposed development. My husband and I and my 2 kids, 4 and 2, moved into that house in December. We did not buy into Zionsville to live next to an apartment building complex that could be found in Fishers or Carmel. We had the rug pulled out from under our feet when we found out about this. I have 2 young kids. We worry about, on the personal level, I worry about the light coming from it, the noise, because I've lived in apartment buildings before. I know that they're very noisy. Our kids' rooms directly face this. Not to mention the 15 parking spots that are going to be opened right in front of my house. I'd like to have my kids play outside. There's going to be traffic going through. We also worry about things that the rest of the Zionsville community worries about. We worry about our property value. What's going to happen? We moved here from California, where property values fluctuate. We never thought in Zionsville, Indiana, that we would have the same problem. We worry about crime. We worry about the high density. We worry about parking for all these cars and visitors coming in. And most of all, having 2 young kids, I worry about traffic. The traffic on the south side of the village is very, very bottlenecked. First and Main, anytime you look up First Street, you see a line of cars. Everyone is finding cut-throughs on 2nd and 3rd Street. And 3rd Street goes right past our house, and cars are going really fast down that street often. What I notice in the plans, because there's one entrance and one exit from this apartment building for the 255 parking spots, plus the 70 to 80 parking spots along the perimeter for the public, not to mention the 15 parking spots in front of our house. What I noticed from that one entrance and exit is that it's not lined up with 2nd Street. So there will not be a 3-way stop there. So what happens to everyone coming through on the cut-throughs? They're gonna find another cut-through somewhere else. Right now, I hesitate to take my kids across 1st Street. I find myself walking up to 1st and Oak because of the sheer amount of traffic going through. As a pedestrian, I find that safer with my kids. There's no crosswalks for pedestrians in that area, and I don't think there's any pedestrian crossing signs at Main and Sycamore. How are all the people that they're bringing in going to get across the street safely? I don't see it happening. I think before this needs to be approved, there needs to be a traffic plan for any development in this area, a traffic solution for this area. Like I said, we love Zionsville. We bought here for the green space and the community. Everyone knows their neighbors. It was mentioned to me several times, people barely lock their doors because it's safe. What's going to happen to that community? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Ralph Stacy, 60 South 2nd Street. Dear Plan Commission members, my wife Jan and I have resided in downtown Zionsville for many years. We worked in our family-owned and operated, actually 3 village store locations for 35 years, and I have lived in the same home for 73 years on 2nd Street. I also served on the Zionsville Plan Commission as Vice President and Board of Zoning Appeals as President many decades ago. The Sycamore Flats on West Sycamore Street property, better known as the Hanson property, abuts a single-family neighborhood to the north that was recorded as the original plot, first recorded in 1852, re-recorded in 1857, after the fire of 1856 of the Boone County Courthouse, on 28 acres, with careful attention to the 65 lot sizes, 60 by 120 feet, and all the streets 60 feet wide, and all alleys 16 feet wide. This West Sycamore Street proposal is another planned unit development like the 200 West proposal that you considered about 3 years ago and denied. One thing that these PUDs have in common is too much on too little. This proposed PUD has frontage on a one-way street east that was an alley in my youth and may not even be a dedicated street. This PUD belongs in downtown Indianapolis and not next to single-family owned homes that some have been in multi-generational ownership and are architecturally very significant to the village, which was founded in 1852. These are big family investments that need to be protected. And this holds true with the Sullivan Muntz Cultural Center and others bordering and close by. I asked this the other night when there was the meeting. I asked Mr. Hart and his associates, would they want this type of development next to their homes and families on only 4 acres? What are the plans for traffic control on Sycamore Street and 2nd Street for ingress and egress on the proposed dogleg intersection on this huge filled-in development on only 4 acres with just one entrance, a public safety issue, to the entire development located near a busy intersection today, especially during high season for the Dairy Queen, where 2nd Street is blocked at times on both sides of the street between Sycamore and Hawthorne Streets. This problem has been going on for a long time, getting worse, and should not be permitted. Someday, when 1st and 2nd Street will need to be changed with each being one way to help to relieve the growing vehicular bicycle and pedestrian traffic. What problems will this development add to this change? The parking problem at times in our downtown will not be addressed by developers' additional 94 perimeter parking spaces available to the public until midnight each night. They will be gobbled up by the on-site commercial and apartment components and maybe surrounding resident business. What other concessions will there be, or are they asking from the town of Zionsville or the taxpayers besides the TIF funding, which is a funding fountain for them, and continued diversion of tax revenue or project funding from our schools and municipal services? We are not looking forward to the next school referendum with all the added students from this and other residential developments. I noticed in a recent issue of the Zionsville Times paid advertisement of the town's advertised 2018 annual report, 4 bonds sold for over $10 million for road improvements outside the village and an additional $8 million upcoming town sewer projects not in the village, and supposedly no rate increases. I think it would be a good idea for our town to look at its history and understand that there is a way to bring growth and development along in a more managed way, as was done in the 1980s with the Growth Continuation Ordinance. You again need to use common sense rather than approving those questionable dollars and cents. This PUD is too much, too dense in the family neighborhood. Please vote no. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Evening, Mr. President, commissioners. My name is Eric Gohausen. I'm at 7464 Fox Hollow Court. I've been asked on behalf of many village residents and non-village residents to speak on their behalf, as well as the petition you're aware of that's quickly approximating about 1% of the Zionsville population. We understand and we urge you, first of all, to reject the proposal. We understand there will be a need to support the tax base here. We think there's a far more responsible way of doing so. In particularly, just to put it in reference, the $7 to $9 million economic benefit over 25 years represents $10.37 per person per year, which I think in many persons' opinion is rather de minimis. In addition, we've seen no statistics from the developer on vacancy rates of existing properties. It's my understanding that under the Freedom of Information Act, requests have been put forward for a number of police calls to current apartment complexes in the area. Revenue base in downtown Zionsville from the businesses over the last 2 to 3 years. In addition, they provided no statistics to support their targeted demographics. The market demand, their expected occupancy rates or expected rental rates will support their estimates. The traffic studies are simply that they provided, and the economic impact are studies at best and represent pure conjecture. Quoting Mr. Price in an article published in the Times Sentinel not long ago, he stated, quote, "We'll have very few opportunities where PUD would make sense and no one is seriously advocating PUD use for residential development," end of quote. Ignoring the opinions and the input of Zionsville taxpayers, in addition to the statement last Thursday's presentation by the developer that they will not entertain modifications, underscores a complete disregard for the position of the residents and the taxpayers of this great community. Again, strongly encourage you to reject the proposal and explore other options. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello there. My name is John Novotny. No notes, just heart today. Okay, hold it down. I've lived in Zionsville for 25 years. 20 of that was up in Countrywood. My wife and I had always envisioned retiring into the village. We bought a house on 350 South 6th Street about 2 years ago. Thank you, Gary, for helping us with that, and had no idea something like this would be coming in. Why did you come to Zionsville? Why did I come to Zionsville? The first time I saw Lions Park, Main Street, what Brick Street is, that was it for me. I saw that and I knew that was the town I wanted to be in. I love it. When I look at the picture from where the Bentley dealership is to what this is, it's not Zionsville. I understand we have to have income for the village. I understand that the downtown business people would like this there because of 188 residents so close to them. I understand them running petitions, Cobblestone, Midwest, all that. But thinking of the people in the village and the cut-through traffic, 250 cars going around that corner, all the rest is not us. It really isn't. We can find a better use for this piece of property that creates income for our town, but not this. It does not fit with the village. We are unique, and we need to keep it that way. That's what brings people into our community. That's all I got.
All right, thank you.
Hello. My name is Ann Royalty. I live at 325 South 3rd Street, Zionsville. I'm also an economist at IUPUI. Another important reason that many families chose to move to Zionsville is its excellent school system. To maintain the quality of our schools, Zionsville has voted through school referenda in 2012 and 2015 to raise taxes to supplement the funding ZCS gets from the state and from property taxes, which were capped back in 2019, causing the shortfall to the school system. ZCS provides data on the fiscal impact of proposed development when requested so that decision makers and others can take into account the effect of the development on the school's fiscal situation. And I want to be clear that ZCS always wants everybody to know that the information they provide on the fiscal impact is based on data provided by others, such as the developer and the research affiliate of IU, and also that they do not take any position on developments or zoning. This Sycamore Flats apartment complex is projected to produce 18 new students per year for ZCS to educate. Actually, 18.4. However, because the development is in a TIF, the real estate taxes paid on the development do not flow to the schools or other entities that would otherwise receive them, but instead into the TIF. That ends up creating a structural deficit for the school corporation. The fiscal summary provided to the developers by ZCS indicates that the expenses associated with educating the projected 18.4 students will exceed the funding received for those students by approximately $50,000 a year. By my calculation, that means that every student from these apartments would put the school system about $2,700 in the red. That's about $1,250,000 over the lifetime of the TIF, since the developer has requested it be extended to 25 more years. And of course, if the number of students exceeds the projected 18 per year, which in my opinion could easily be the case, especially because based on students who currently reside at Quail Run, which is also within walking distance to some schools, which obviously is an attractive thing for parents with school-age children. If you based it on the number of students in Quail Run, you would actually predict more than twice this number of 18. So we'd be talking $100,000 a year and $2.5 million over 25 years, if it were really two times. Given all of this information, I am rather baffled as to why in the frequently asked questions provided by the developer, they say with no justification that, quote, the apartment community will have a net positive impact on the school system. I argue that allowing 184 apartments in a TIF is a bad decision for Zionsville schools and a bad decision for Zionsville residents. It simply digs deeper the hole that the referendum funding must fill, and that funding comes from us in the form of higher taxes. Please vote against this development.
Thank you. Okay. All right. We've actually hit time, but in spirit of letting everybody speak, we'll continue. I would like to see if you guys could move it along because we were going to stick it about to the same amount of time, but I'll let it go on a little bit longer. So just try to, if it's been said, try not to repeat it. Thanks.
Okay, Reader's Digest version. Here we come. My name is Gary Angstead. I live at 345 West Hawthorne, and I'm here to talk about value of this relative to the home surrounding it. What would the addition of a 4-acre apartment complex have on changing value of surrounding homes? The frequently asked questions sheet references a Harvard study. We always like to look at Harvard studies, right? That draws a general conclusion that apartments do not negatively impact the sales price of nearby single-family homes. But the Harvard study we found, America's working communities and the impact of multi-family housing studies apartments built in working communities. So working communities are defined as those consisting primarily of residents where low and moderate income are prevalent. So that is not Zionsville. I really didn't like this when it came out, but it says the richest town in Indiana. I don't like being called the richest, but you get the point. And Zionsville named best place to live in Indiana. We are not a low or moderate income community. We found another study conducted in Savannah, Georgia, where their conclusions were that apartments devalued nearby single-family residences by an average of 5%, more for homes closer to the apartments and less for those farther away. The name of this, I love it, the hedonic pricing model applied to the housing market of the city of Savannah. And to quote, 6 spatial control variables are considered. Locations across from or adjacent to open space carry premia, as do locations on cul-de-sacs and lakes. In addition, proximity to an apartment complex is capitalized as a negative quantity. So 5% was the average. One of our neighbors just bought their home on Sycamore a few months ago. So using just the average 5% decrease in value, their home would decline over $29,000 with the construction of Sycamore Flats. I'm a realtor, and I help a lot of people buy Zionsville homes. I warn them that Eagle Township has the highest average assessed value of single-family homes in Indiana, and the village sells for a higher price per square foot than outside of town. So you're buying a lifestyle, not just a home, when you buy in the village. So it costs more to buy in the village, but you are rewarded when it comes time to sell. The village is unique in its interesting, attractive downtown and parks and trails and walkable lifestyle. We like to claim authenticity as a village, which has grown pretty much one house at a time over 167 years to about 600 homes. The village of West Clay and Carmel is what Sycamore Flats resembles. We are the real village. They are the pretenders. To add 184 new homes to our village in a couple of years' time would change forever what makes Zionsville, Zionsville. This is not an investment. This is our home. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Heather Lusk. I live at 285 Hawthorne Street, and 200 West was not that long ago, so I know you guys remember it, but a couple of little details because you've done a lot since then. This actually is a bit different. They both had 0-foot setbacks, both 100% lot coverage, both were going to be between 2 stories and 4 stories in the back, both on the exact same plot of land. This has 3 times the number of multifamily housing, 3 times the number of apartments than 200 West had, about the same number of parking spaces, and 1/7 of the retail space. That's not the best use for this land if you've already rejected something that was less dense. Also, a little side note, when PUDs were first brought to the town of Zionsville by Mr. Price as town council president, he introduced the concept to the town council. He specifically said that they would be used infrequently for, and I quote, low-density projects. This is not low density. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Mark Albers. Me and my brother Greg own the Bentley dealership. My father, we moved to Zionsville as kids, and we've actually had that dealership in our family for 50 years. It started in 1969. We've paid property taxes into the town for that length of time. We actually think we're the perfect idea of what you want out of a business because we don't generate much traffic, but we pay taxes, okay? My new neighbors in the funeral home I'm in love with, okay? There's nobody in this world that, and I try to be a good neighbor to my neighbors, okay? If you don't think I want that eyesore of the old Calico Corners building gone, you're nuts, okay? But what you're putting in at this level of density, you're inviting us to leave, okay? There's just no way. It's already, people don't even understand when they talk about the one-way streets. They don't know every day 3 or 4 trucks come. We do a lot of business via internet and mail order. So there's constantly trucks behind on 2nd Street, dropping off every day. There's also when people bring tow trucks and flatbeds have to drop. Do you want that stuff all dropped on the front on 1st Street? It will make it nuts. That's one of the reasons we've fought about having one-way streets. And there is no easy way to fix the traffic situation in a little town that was never built for it. They had the answer years ago when they wanted to go down Cooper Road before it all got fought and connect to the interstate, which is what needs to be done, because where's all your traffic coming from? The villages are already built up. Back when Ralph Stacy and all that was all proposed and laid out years ago, and then I still don't see why you can't connect to the interstate, except now they've made it an equestrian area or something. But how are you going to come through the town and not have restrictions when you have Lincoln Park? Just look at the street widths. You guys, as far as giving TIFs, you ought to be thankful for the merchants you have in town, because it's very difficult with the parking. And look, a lot of people like to walk around, okay? But at the end of the day, it's actually hard to do business because the internet is destroying retail. It's making things a lot worse. The town's got at least they've got the parking lot where we have in the nice, Saturday farmer's market. I'd love to see the building ripped down there and just make more parking lot out of it. I don't know what you're going to do with traffic, but and I'm not against development. I actually want something. I don't want to look at that thing. I mean, if I didn't think I'd get arrested, I'd have torched it a long time ago. Okay? But I can't do that, okay? So I would love it if anybody can go beat on any of my neighbors to take care of the property better. It's too much, and there has to be something else. And if you're putting something in there and you have to give a TIF or something because it's low density, it's going to be really high quality stuff, that makes more sense. But why give tax breaks to developers to put stuff in when you're not really helping the what do you call it, the little stores in town and everything that are struggling? I don't think a big developer deserves a TIF to build in here. I think it's the wrong project. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. My name's Scott Lusk. I'm at 285 West Hawthorne Street, which means 3rd Street one way is essentially our driveway. So when I pull out of the garage, it is onto that one-way street. And when my kids pull out in their bikes, it's onto that one-way street. Just to add a quick personal note, in the last 3 months, 4 cars have gone the wrong way on that one-way street. So if we put in this kind of density, this many people in cars trying to get around out of one location, I really fear that we're going to see a lot more people trying to take shortcuts that may even be the wrong way on a one-way. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
My name is John Townsend. I live at 305 West Pine Street here in the village. Been a resident since 1978, raised 4 kids. I'm going to talk to you tonight, among other things, about the comprehensive plan, one of the issues you're supposed to look at. The comprehensive plan I first looked at was one in 2010. It showed this entire area that we're talking about tonight as residential. It became a little bit more nuanced in 2014 when they did the market study. And in Area 2, which is the area we're talking about tonight, there's several points where I think this development fails. Future improvements at Main Sycamore First to address traffic issues should be designed to prevent the intersection and Sycamore Street from becoming a pedestrian barrier to the rest of downtown. There is absolutely nothing being done by this project that's going to help that. But on the other hand, we're going to use TIF funds in order to do bank abatement. Now, it seems to me that before, much as I love bank abatement, I also like safety and I like my neighbors. And I think if we're going to spend TIF funds, we should look at that street, Sycamore Street, we should look at those intersections and see if we can't devote some of those TIF funds there. It also suggests potential uses. On the ground floor, it suggests a restaurant, retail, office, professional service. At the current time, they show up to 6,000. I think the plans now show about 4,500 square feet of something. We don't know, but even so, 4,500 or 6,500 square feet is absolutely nothing compared to the amount of space that we have in the apartments. It's kind of like putting an ATM machine in the corner of a gasoline station and calling it a PUD because it has a banking center. Doesn't work. On the upper floors, it shows office, professional service. That doesn't exist, and it shows residential. But it says at right location that it's consistent with downtown character. What does this describe? This describes the zoning classification that currently exists. And that's the reason why we think it should stay there. We have suggested back in 2016 through the VRA that basically you put in the urban business village classification along a line that would extend, if you extended 2nd Street through the property, basically put your commercial up there and then buffer it, as the last developer did, along Sycamore Street with single family there. And also you have the cove. And if you look at this project and you look at how it butts up there, there is no buffering. Several of those homes are going to look up on a 4-story garage. Now, speaking of garages, again, going back to 2014, it says above grade structures, when it talks about structured parking, are generally not consistent with the character of downtown Zionsville. This is a 4-story above grade garage. Is it hidden? Well, not to the people who live in the cove. That's what they're going to see when they look up. Does it help our traffic? No. And if you look at the 2015 and 2017 PACER reports in town, all the streets there are classified as 2s. 2s are poor. 1 is impassable. We are basically just above impassable. And I'm proud to say that Zionsville has no impassable streets. Although if you look at Sycamore immediately in front of this project, it was a 4 back in 2015. It's now a 2. Now imagine what's going to happen when you add 184 units, some 1-bedroom, some 2-bedroom, a lot of people, there's going to be 2 or more people perhaps in many of those apartments. They're going to be coming out in one entrance, which, by the way, if you look at the entrance, it's not lined up with 2nd Street. It's offset. And it's right next to the funeral home entrance. And so you're going to have 3 entrances going into this very short section of Sycamore between 2nd Street and 1st Street, where you're going to have 3 competing entrances into it. I suggested when we met with the developer that they move their entrance to line it up with 2nd Street to make it a 4-way. That was rejected. I suggested in order to keep traffic off of this section of Sycamore Street that they move their leasing office from Sycamore Street onto the east side of the structure so that most of the traffic would go into the main entrance rather than going further on Sycamore Street, and that was rejected. We suggested that they break up the facades that are on the east, north, and south sides. They did a fairly decent job on the front. I like that. That's kind of a South Village approach. We suggested a South Village approach along the east side because if you look at that picture, when you're coming in on Zionsville, guess what you see? That was rejected. They thought they might look into the materials on the facades on the other two sides. I note, however, tonight that there's been no change. And a PUD is supposed to talk about innovation, something different. But if you look at three sides of this building, it's no different from anything I saw up in Anson last night when I went to Myers. It's no different than the projects we see. I mean, it's cookie cutter. This project is essentially a little piece of caramel or a little piece of Fitchers dropped right into my backyard. So, in closing, raised 4 kids. I've got one of them coming back from Iraq in the middle of April. One of the things I know that he loves is a small town feeling. That's why we moved here. That's why we moved in the village. I'm hoping that for my 4 kids, that the action you take is going to continue to keep us as small town Zionsville. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Roger Burris, attorney, practicing at 410 West Oak Street in Zionsville. Born and raised in Zionsville, lived here all my life, practiced law for 36 years. I represent the property owner, Barbara Hanson-Slaff, and as most of you know, I was here talking to you about this project a year and a half ago when it was rezoned, and I'd just like to read from my letter back then that the comprehensive plan calls for mixed use. Everyone seems to agree that the most desirable use for this property is a commercial/residential mixed-use development, which is exactly what my client has worked toward for over 4 years. Well, the VBD zoning classification allows residential use. It does so only above the ground level and only with a maximum building height of 35 feet. You know, we had these discussions a year and a half ago, and surely you remember, because we had it over and over again, that VBD zoning was not going to allow this property to be developed. This is the 3rd time that my client has brought, she hasn't, but she's worked with a developer to bring a project to you, and I think far and away this one is the best of the 3. I wasn't involved in the first one, but that was 400 apartments. I agree with a lot of what's been said here today by people in the village, because I've lived in the village 2 times. I own 3 buildings in the village. 400 apartments was too much, but I think 184 is actually relatively manageable. It's a high-quality development that I think the town would be proud of, and it allows this property to be developed. So I would encourage you to consider the evidence, and I'm sure Matt will talk about the school information from the school corporation, but consider the evidence, and consider that you know, the market drives what happens so much, and you have to consider what can actually be feasible for this site if you want to see anything done there. My last comment is about traffic, because the town has talked about coming up with some traffic answers now for 3 years, and we're still waiting to hear those. So we're anxious to hear what the town has in mind for traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Matt Fry, owner of Bub's Burgers and Ice Cream, 620 South Main. I hope y'all want to eat at Bub's again after I say this. From a business perspective, obviously I support this. More people, more foot traffic, more excitement. And I can tell you, in the city just west of you, us, that doesn't like to be said with a C word, is it works. It works. This kind of concept works in an area that is very residential, small town, believe it or not. But and from a personal perspective, I'm keeping this very short. But from a business, yes. From a personal one, I've known the Harts for many, many years. They do it right. They do it safe. That's all I know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Tonona, 640 South Main Street, owner of Sub 16. Like Matt, you know, we're on the south side we're across the river on the south side, and, you know, have been in Zionsville for 15 years. I moved to Zionsville for some of the many reasons that people have shared tonight, and I understand both sides, you know, from a personal side and from a business side. my youngest child, he's a freshman at Zionsville High School, and we moved to Zionsville for the community, for the schools. As a business owner, having a thriving business and being successful at business, we're able to give back to the community, give back to the schools, give back to, Boone County in the forms of many of the non-for-profit organizations. So, some of the cons that I've heard, the traffic issues, that's an ongoing issue, irrespective of what's going on. It may be an opportunity to fix that problem in conjunction with something like this, but that's something that needs to be addressed regardless. I mean, as a business owner, we would like to see a bigger tax base. Obviously, that helps the community. But we'd also like to see foot traffic, which we don't have enough of. And if you looked at our business, many of our lunch and dinner crowd, they're coming not from Zionsville, they're coming from Indianapolis and West Carmel, and which was a surprise to me and pretty shocking. So, one of the things that when I first moved here, it was, keep it in Zionsville, try to support local businesses, and, we need the foot traffic to survive. If you look around, how many businesses, since we've opened that store, gone and, come and gone. And, businesses cannot survive without foot traffic. And, we think this is something that would help us out on a business front. And we would like to see it, move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
My name's Bob Spoonmore. I live at 10338 Oak Ridge Drive. I've lived there 26 years now, and we have seen 6 of our very close friends leave the Zionsville community to go get maintenance-free living options in Carmel, Broad Ripple, other areas, because those options didn't exist here. We look at ourselves being a few months away from an empty nester situation. We look forward to the opportunities to have those locations in a walkable downtown area in Zionsville where it would be a maintenance-free living option, so we could walk to our favorite restaurants that we have to drive a long time to find a parking spot now, even coming from our neighborhood just a couple miles north. So we entertain the idea and look forward to and would move into an option that would be a walkable area that would add parks and trails and provide more parking spaces to the community, which we think would add value. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hello, my name is Kent Ezra. I live at 654 Spring Hills Drive in Zionsville. I'm owner of Cobblestone here in the village. We've been there since 2000. We've lived in Zionsville since 2001. I think that the residents who have said about parking and the traffic, it's well-founded. I see it every day with the problems that are there. I think that they're scalable, and that the town and with some good input, we can make a good thing of this project and the traffic situations. I guess my fear is if we don't develop, if we don't bring foot traffic to our businesses, if we don't do that, what is the alternative? This is a very big project. I agree. I'm for it. My wife and I are for it. I think that not doing anything is not a solution. So I just wanted to say we're in for it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll wrap up public comment for tonight. At this point in time, we do have a request for a continuance in front of us. Is there any discussion regarding the continuance? If not, is there a motion on the continuance?
I move that we continue this request to the April, what date are we looking for?
Second.
Second? Second?
April 15th.
Not April 2nd.
April 15th.
April 15th, meeting of the Zionsville Planning Commission.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay. We need to modify the motion to keep the public hearing open until that time?
Yes, I'll accept that.
Second. All right, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. Motion carries 5-0. Continuance, obviously, everybody's got a lot to think about. Thanks. I'm going to give everybody a couple minutes to kind of clear, because assuming some of you are going to leave.
I'm earning my money. No, that was what I found out. So they branded it.
So we need, if someone's we're gonna use the upstairs, we're assuming we'll go busy. So we need a laptop right before, probably 15 or 20, and then some of them, and that is after the team. I don't disagree with you guys. Yeah, let's go through this. Yeah.
Sure. Once again, we do have continuing business, so I'd ask that you please leave if you're not going to stay for the business. Not really.
That's fine.
$400 a year.
Contact info.
Yeah, that would be great. Things like this.
There's my cell phone number right there. No problem at all. All right, keep.
I'll say that again. Chat.
We don't have Larry here yet. So.
How many were upstairs?
We had 20 at least. Wow. But most people, you really saw most people wanted to be down here.
Yes. In the trenches.
It's Mike and Mary. They didn't want to join the family.
Mary is sick, and Mike's out of town on a business trip. All right, we're going to get started here again, so if you could, if you're not going to stay for these proceedings, please vacate. I want to thank the Holiday Farms contingent for letting us swap the docket. I very much appreciate it. And with that, next on the docket, under continued businesses, dockets number 2019-04 PP, petition for primary plat approval, and 2019-05 DP, petition for development plan approval for Holiday Farms, address project 3900 South US 421. Is petitioner present?
Yes, good evening, Mr. President. For the record, again, it's Matt Price here tonight on behalf of Hinkie Development. with regard to Phase 1 of the Holiday Farm project. With me this evening are representatives from the petitioner. We wanted to, it's been a little while since we've been in front of you relative to this planned unit development. And going to ask Steve Hinkey first to give us a little background of where we are on this project. And then with regard to the plat and development plan itself, Phil Sundling from Hinkey Development is also going to make a presentation about the two petitions you have in front of you this evening. And then we'd be available to answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Hinkey. I reside at 3524 Club Estates Drive, Carmel, Indiana. I'm the president of Hinkey Development, and we appreciate the opportunity tonight to present to you our first section of Holiday Farms. We have been working very diligently since the Plan Commission approved our zoning last summer, and working through all the engineering, all the layouts, and so forth. Just to remind you a little bit, this is a Pete Dye Championship Golf Course community that's being developed. The first picture you see there is Pete swinging in the rough in front of Holiday Farms. Pete actually designed a course on this property for Mr. Holiday in 1994. He then subsequently, about 2 years ago, updated the design to accommodate our residential development. The bridge, which is no longer there, as my understanding, is being reconstructed. I think bids have been let and will be reconstructed hopefully in the next couple of months. This is a preliminary layout that we have on here. Basically, this is the layout that we presented to you last time for approval and layout. Of course, here's 421. Coming up through here, there's the Interactive Academy. The current entrance, Holiday Road, is right in this area in here. And we, of course, committed that we would realign and have our main entrance across from the subdivision across the street. The layout of our development, you'll see on our first phase and everything has not changed very much at all. A few of the golf holes have changed very, very slightly. The par 3 course near the clubhouse, a couple of those, that has changed, as well as the range, just the configuration of them. This is section 1 that we're presenting here. We have 165 custom lots in this section. It will be a private gated community. The gated entrance, of course, will be right here on 421, as I had indicated. In this first section, there will be a variety of homes, a variety of size of lot and styles. What we try to do the same thing at Bridgewater as well as at Chatham Hills, is have a variety of product available, and all of this is custom product. The main entry coming into here, this section in here, right in through here, will be 110 to 120 foot lots. Those homes in there will be in at 850, probably to 2 million plus. This section here that I'm highlighting has some larger lots. Most of these lots are overlooking the 10th and 11th holes. They sit high above the holes with a wooded background. These lots in here are all 110 foot lots, also on the second and third hole. So most of our lots in this first section you can see are on golf course. If you're looking at this area here, these lots are also about 110 wide, also overlooking the 12th hole. Similar sized lots, 105 to 120 in this area, also overlooking hole 12 and 13 right here. This area is a little bit different from the standpoint that it's what you would call your classic empty nester neighborhood. By empty nester, there's about 40 lots in here. The first 20 or so are 65 foot wide lots. Those will have custom empty nester homes on them. Those homes will probably range in the area of $600,000 to $850,000. The 20 lots to the north of those will be 70 to 80 foot wide lots, again custom empty nester homes individually built on those lots. Those homes, like at Chatham, for instance, are averaging around 900,000 on an 80-foot lot. We would expect that to be similar here. Next. These are the type of homes you would expect to see in the development. They will be larger homes on the wooded lots as well as on lots overlooking the golf course. Backyards are very, very important. The national statistics are that 60% of the people who live in a golf course community don't play golf. They want the big backyards for views, and they don't have to maintain it. We are maintaining that, but outdoor living is a really key feature today, and you can see as evidenced by some of these pictures, the outdoor living here overlooking the golf course. This is on one of the holes at Chatham. Similarly, with all the terrain here and this lower right-hand picture, it presents a great opportunity to have decks, outdoor living, and so forth, overlooking streams and golf course through trees. These are other pictures from Chatham, just showing the beauty of the course and the trees and landscape surrounding it. The up and down. This property has a lot of undulation, a lot of elevation change throughout. There's ravines, there's creeks, just an incredible property topographically. This is a guardhouse plan that we have for the entry. One of the things we're doing here, and I'll show you in a slide in a minute here, is we really wanted to preserve the character of the entry. We love the entry, the Holiday Road entry. I think I mentioned at the Plan Commission meeting, we want to preserve that feel, preserve that look. We also want to have a stately type guardhouse as we're coming in. Same thing with some, with columns and so forth. Very, what I would call Zionsville-esque, very colonial revival, Williamsburg type look. This shows the entry. This would be 421, and here's our entry coming in. We did a boulevard type divided entry coming in. We have heavy landscaping throughout here. We also have brick walls similar to this that would be coming into this area, and then a curved brick wall also off of there, and then wrought iron and another column. But most importantly, we spent a lot of time, as I said, really wanting to capture and keep that feel of Holiday Road with the trees and the canopies and so forth. So what we've done is we've come in with a gated entry guardhouse being somewhere in this area here, and we've turned this to come around. By doing that, we're able to maintain and preserve a large area of trees, a wooded area, behind the guardhouse. A lot of developments you would see, you just come in, there'd be a guardhouse, they'd take all the trees out. What we've done here is preserve this and set this in a setting here so that immediately when you're coming in the entry, not only is there a lot of landscape of your walls, but as soon as you come in the entry, you're going to be seeing this guardhouse nestled against this large canopy of trees here. The green also indicates the forest line along here, and again, we're going to preserve and keep a large area of woods on both sides of this coming in, so we maintain that feel. This below shows you the type of the wall with the limestone caps. The column over here is a column that we will use throughout the development that will delineate one neighborhood from the other. It just sets the tone as, okay, we're in the Forest Ridge section or whatever section you're in. This slide here shows the pedestrian trail. One of the most important things to us in this development are walking trails. We're blessed to have the Turkey Foot Trail down here already coming into the property. The bridge, bridge in this area here, but also Holiday. Current Holiday Road comes in right through here. We're now bringing that into here, and then the entire rest of the way is all on the existing Holiday Road. Those will be a 12-foot path way going through that. We'll have a connection right here where the Holiday and Turkey Foot will come together before going across the bridge. And if you'll recall, in later sections, we have obtained, from the Rogers an agreement to have an easement on this side so we can connect to the 50 acres that Mr. Holliday 10 years or so ago donated to the town for a nature preserve. Also in the entry here, in future sections, we will also connect and have trails along Michigan Road. We also are bringing a trail coming right into here, around here, in order to preserve and save all these trees along the entryway. That's going to be a beautiful setting, coming in. Also removes them from the traffic on 421, but most importantly, it creates a lot of ambience and saves from taking out about 30 feet of trees along here by moving it into and making it a path and for beautification. There's a cemetery, as we discussed, on the site. The cemetery, I think the latest deaths I've seen in there or burials in there was from around the 1870s, 1880s. There's even a tombstone in there from someone who fought in the War of 1812. We want to preserve that, as I'd indicated before. We want to make it, an amenity as part of the trails and the walking the system. What we're planning to do is put a wrought iron fence around it, a brass plaque of some type talking about the history of the cemetery and some of the residents in there, putting some park benches by it and so forth. We've already submitted this to DNR, Cemetery Development, and we're waiting their permit approval. We expect that in the next couple weeks. We will not do any improvements on it until obviously the permit is in hand, and it'll be protected, during construction. As I said, we will have a signage to memorialize it with the wrought iron fencing and pedestrian access to it. Detention and drainage, that was a issue that was discussed at the original Plan Commission meeting and the follow-up, and something that we certainly took to heart, to making sure that our detention and drainage will not only meet Zionsville's requirements, but we will exceed it. On the 10-year event, it's not a matter of we're exceeding it 1% or whatever, we're exceeding it 10%, which is much more than required. On the 100-year flood event, we're detaining almost 38% more than is required. So the current project status, by the way, this is a tree that we are preserving in the range area down near Eagle Creek. On the project status here, we hope to begin construction in mid to late April. Everything's going out to bid now. Golf course construction, will begin. Our plan is to complete the infrastructure and golf course in November. We're really under a time gun from the standpoint that we've been awarded Homerama for 2020. We've done 2 of them. We had one at Chatham in 16, one in 18, and they want to come here. This will probably be one of the largest Homeramas they've had. I think we already have 10 builders participating in it. So, and there could be, it might even be as many as 12. The Homerama area would be in the entry area as you're coming in to the development, those first lots. So we'll start pulling residential permits in December, and that's why I was saying time is of the essence, because we do need to get started so that they can be in the ground before the end of the year in order to be able to make the Homerama. It's always a tough time getting it, getting there and last minute things and everything on it. But I think if we can get approval, we certainly would appreciate your approval this evening, so that, as I said, because time is of the essence there. So we're excited about hosting that. That's going to be a great event here. We're finalizing some of the water main sizing and design with Citizen Energy Group on some of the layout. We're working closely with your Fire Marshal Frost and Fire Chief Van Gorder, and so we're moving forward on all of that. So with that, I'll be brief in my comments. We certainly appreciate your consideration. We're excited about this project. We have our engineers here also this evening to answer any questions that you might have, as well as the rest of us. But we definitely appreciate your consideration and look forward to get going.
All right, thank you very much. At this point in time, is there any comments from the public on this matter? If there is, step forward, name and address, please.
Good evening again. Ralph Stacy, 60 South 2nd Street. I was pleased to see your presentation on the cemetery out there, Cox Cemetery. When I was Eagle Township trustee for one term and then served 2 terms on the Eagle Township board, I initiated I call it the resurrection of the pioneer cemeteries here in Eagle Township. And this was one that we did a little work on. This tombstone that you showed, I can remember helping the expert with that, but there's a lot more that needs to be done out there. But I would be more than willing. I have a nice notebook of information about Cox Cemetery, and I have articles on Archibald Cox, the 1812 guy, who got away from the Indians a couple times and fled from Canada and came back home here. So I'd be glad to help. I'm in the phone book on 2nd Street, and also the Sullivan Muntz has loose leaf notebooks of the resurrection of the different pioneer cemeteries that we spent money, taxpayers' money, to get up to somewhat. Cox was a different one. It was, and probably still, it was part of the ownership by Mr. Holliday when they changed the name from O'Neill Road to Holiday Road. I have newspaper articles where the Hollidays were actually going to deed over the cemetery to the township. That never happened. That was before my time. But there's a lot of history out there. And one tombstone that was of a young lady, her first name was Indiana. But anyway, I just want you to know that I'd be glad to help you with the cemetery and show you where materials are and provide materials that I have accumulated from the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda McKnight, and I currently live at 8502 East 200 South. I used to live near 421 and 32 for 22 years, and then recently moved back in November to start my family and with my husband. So I didn't have a chance to talk previously in last summer when this was first brought up because I didn't live here at the time, but I do now. So I did want to bring up some concerns that I have about this project. My biggest one is the water and how the golf course specifically is going to impact our drinking water for Eagle Creek. As I'm sure you know, golf courses take a lot of fertilizing and chemicals to make their grass perfectly green, as well as just water consumption in general is very high. So I don't know what has been done in terms of research as to what the impact will be to the stream that is right there. And if you look at the picture, I mean, it is like the runoff would be right into the stream. It looks extremely close. So that's my biggest concern. But some other concerns are just the amount of trees that are also going to be cut down. Sounds like you're going to save a little bit in the front, which is great. But if you compare this to what is there now, there are massive amounts of acres that are just going to be completely wiped out for the homes. And I don't know what the impact that would be in terms of deer or other species that live there. I remember growing up as a kid, we'd go down there as the woods road looking for deer specifically on Holiday Road and loved it. So those are my big concerns, as well as just what steps are going to be done also for the water consumption, because it takes a significant amount of water to keep the grass green throughout the year. And lastly would be traffic. So increase the number of homes. What's the plan for traffic? Has there been any study on what the impacts would be for that as well? That's all.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else?
My name is Lance Hatley. I live at 4560 Willow. The golf course on the south side will butt up against my backyard. And I don't know what your intentions, excuse me, intentions are as far as will there be a fence, some sort of delineation there? How is that transition? But I also want to say, I'm very excited about what you're doing. That development back there could have been awful. As far as I'm concerned, it's pristine. I'm looking forward to it. I own a landscape company. Okay. But seriously, I don't know what's going on along our property there. There's a new stake in my yard. I'm not sure what that means, so if we could talk, I'd love to do that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else?
My name is Lawrence Breen. I live at Oakwood Drive up against the woods on the southern end of the property here. And I was just curious about how the water is going to be pulled for watering the golf course. I've been on a project once where a huge amount of well water was pulled out of the new soccer fields out on the west side of town, and it pulled down the wells for houses about half a mile away when the initial seeding was done, and large amounts of water were pulled. And I'm wondering, we are on wells, and all the houses along that north side of Willow, I believe, are on well water. And I'm wondering whether we're going to have dry wells as a result of it. And I'm wondering if the developers have any answers for that, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any other comments? Would you like to respond?
Yes, Stacy, we certainly welcome wherever Stacy went. Oh, okay. We certainly welcome his input and help. I mean, I think those are exciting things to add to it. Amanda, a question in regards to water, trees, and traffic. In regards to the water, and same thing with Lawrence, in regards to the water, that will be we will be watering from wells. And we do contact DNR. We work with DNR to monitor wells in the vicinity also if there is any difficulty at all. So the location of those is something we closely monitor and watch and will definitely involve. In regards to the fertilizers and that type thing, we've worked extensively with DNR and others, and we will maintain a 50-foot buffer along Eagle Creek. In fact, in this area, all through here, we have a 50-foot buffer we're maintaining all along Eagle Creek. And there's a lot of areas here, for instance, here, it looks small on this map, but that's probably 200, 250 feet. Same thing in here, you're probably a couple hundred feet away from Eagle Creek there, all forested. A lot of golf courses would have torn that all out and would have put the golf course on Eagle Creek. We have put the golf course in the open field, for instance, that was already there, and have kept it away. That also creates a great filtration. We're also very big on using as few chemicals as we can, even in our ponds. We will stock our ponds with bass, bluegill. Bluegill will help control the mosquito population. The bass controls the bluegills, and we'll use sterile grass carp, which are basically algae eating, eliminating a major use of chemicals in the ponds. Same thing up in this area here with Eagle Creek. We again are maintaining a 50-foot buffer all the way from the north end all the way to the south end, a minimum of 50 feet. Same thing with the streams within the development. Those are a major concern. We've worked with the Army Corps of Engineers extensively protecting those streams, and basically all the streams there, we're impacting less than 4% of those streams. And I think there's probably 4 or 5 miles of streams in there, and we're not impacting hardly any of that. We've also worked extensively with U.S. Fish and Wildlife in regards to the bat habitat and protection of the bat habitat, and are mitigating extensively there by also planting probably 40,000 trees off-site. I think when I did Bridgewater, I planted 100,000 trees before I even did the course there. So we're doing that, and also locating some property. We located some property north of Bloomington that we're actually going to purchase and set up as a permanent conservation easement. That's also a major bat habitat in that area with hiberniculum, which is where bats go in caves and that type of thing. So we've learned a lot about that and worked extensively with them for all that permitting. In regards to the traffic, I think Amanda was asking in regards to traffic. We have done a traffic study on that, a detailed study that we did submit when we went through the Plan Commission. And as part of that, we are making improvements to 421. We're adding accel and decel lanes, as well as a center turn lane in certain areas. We've worked extensively with Indiana Department of Transportation to assure that that will be a very, very workable solution there. Lance, in regards to the golf course, we generally don't like to put fences up. We like the nature, the natural area of it. We also maintain buffers along the property line. We'll be glad to show you that. The golf course really doesn't come that close to you. I assume you're somewhere in this area here, and we'll be glad to meet with you, go out there and walk it and look at it. But if you're in this area in here, you're probably still 300 or 400 feet from the golf course. But we will be glad to go out there with you and show you around, and welcome to talk on landscaping too. I think I answered, hopefully I answered them, and thank you very much.
All right, thank you. At this point, I would ask for Wayne's staff report.
Thank you. In addressing the plat petition file first, you have a staff report in front of you with 8 exhibits attached, including the findings of fact, and also a number of waiver requests as assembled by the petitioner. Focusing on the waiver requests first, it's very customary and typical to hear those types of requests when they're part of the subdivision control ordinance. In this particular case, the waivers themselves are from standards within the plan unit development ordinance. It's the same mechanism, if you will, but it does live, that information in the waiver process does live in a different document. The plat as it's filed does conform to the ordinance. You do have the waiver requests in front of you where there are deviations from that filing. There are a number of outstanding items, and we do mention those in the staff report that are need to be addressed by the petitioner. These are not items that we would view as overwhelming or of concern to staff. I preface this by saying we're working with a very large piece of property, so there's the number of variables, the number of review comments I think are reflective of that, but certainly staff does not view that as any sort of hurdle for us staff to maneuver through to get this project into its secondary plat window. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions related to the plat petition.
All right, thank you, Wayne. At this point in time, I'll open it up to commission members if they have any questions, comments.
Yeah, I've got a few. I guess my core concern is, I know you guys asked for a continuance last month. There's kind of 20, 25 open items here on this, how do you want to say, what do we call this package? The drainage report, the primary, secondary plats. I guess as much as Wayne will indicate that it's not a burden on him to work through this, I really prefer when these projects, especially a project of this size, and especially we said this from the get-go, that these things should be resolved and signed off before they show up in front of us. And that's just generally my concern as I run down through what you're requesting. Mr. Henke, when you speak of the project, you talk of trails, but as I look at the documentation I have, I see no connection or commitment to the trails being along 421 and connecting the entry. I understand with the nature of 421, there's probably not a good way to make any kind of bicycling trails that would get from 421 to get from this project on the west side of 421 to the east side of 421 until you get down to Willow Road. I'd like to see the commitment to those connections be in this early stage. Same thing, once again, as I get going back through the documentation, I see that, yes, when you say you're going to have a limestone cap on your column details and that kind of stuff, you actually have it here in the documents. But then I look at your entry guardhouse, and I'm what you showed me means something to me. I see a brick building with true arched windows in it, large wood cornice. That could be a copper standing seam roof with a nice portico up top. I'm assuming you've passed this with emergency responders so they can get access. I mean, my concern is I don't want to drive out there someday and tell you you need to demo that building because it's not what you showed me. I'd prefer to see an actual set of drawings and elevations that actually confirm to me that this is what we're going to get. And this, once again, is nothing new. It's what I said when you guys brought this project to us, you know, in the beginning. The documents and the details, to me, mean a lot. And I want to make sure that what I'm approving is what will get built. There's been some projects that have rolled through us where I've approved one thing and then I've seen something else happen. My request for that was to go pull the permits on it, stop work. I don't want to put you in that burden, but I also don't want to find myself wishing I had. So I prefer to see completion of the documentation when you come before us. I think you've had the time to work with Cripe and our town engineers to get the answers to these. Same thing with the guardhouse. Same thing with the bike trails. One quick question. When it comes to how traffic will be handled inside the development, there's multiple areas where golf carts will cross the roads. And on a related note, I know there's some conversation about using golf carts on public streets. Does anybody know where that has ended up?
I can tell you that that topic of conversation is working its way through the town council. There's certainly there's currently a call scheduled here in about 7 days with the town attorney to discuss progress on that topic. Ultimately, that will result in an ordinance change that I would believe that that'll be on the schedule probably in the next 3 months. It feels like based upon the progress that's been accomplished thus far.
So, I mean, guess, Mr. Henke, my concern in general is given the scale of this, we're more than willing to work with you to, you know, bring it down in sections because, you know, once again, it's a large project, but still, given the scale of it, it seems like a lot of this stuff could be tied off a lot more tightly than it's getting done.
I guess to echo Mr. Jones's comments, I have a couple of questions or concerns. One of them is that the review letter, there's still about 7 pages of comments. I didn't count exactly how many there are, but a lot of them say that they'll be addressed in the next submittal. So I personally would like to see those resolved before this moves forward. And I guess this is a question for maybe Wayne, I'm not really sure, but the golf course portion of this, does that come forward as a development plan, or is that just, that can be developed independently of the Plan Commission?
The project itself is wrapped in with the development plan process. They're certainly, currently they're moving through the steps to start tree clearing on that area. We're not, there's a choice of the petitioner to include that as to plat those parcels. That's a choice, and that's not being exercised, and that's fine with the town. But as the way the staff has looked at the golf course is that as those details become available, those are wrapped into your process. So currently they're working towards the grading permit and the execution of that.
Okay. Well, and that was just it. From my perspective, I'm an engineer. I like to look at plans. It's just hard to read the packet we were provided, and I think that's something that you guys provide. But I have 8.5 by 11 sheets. It's really hard to read the level of detail. And as you were giving your presentation, I can now see the trail on here along the road coming in, but it's really hard to see. And I was just having a hard time, making sure that was in there, because that was definitely one of the things that was brought up during the PUD process. And just, again, the overall layout and how this thing is taking shape, we're being asked to approve a small part of this, but the PUD was a larger plan. And not really knowing how the golf course is progressing or what the status of that is. There were a lot of concerns about backyard buffering, and that was brought up too. And you can't really take in the context of the overall development with the small piece of documents that we were provided. So that's my point of view.
Thanks.
Just to confirm, does this have more than one, does the golf course and the residential portion have more than one access point?
Yep, you have to step.
Yes, there's more than one access point. There's an access point that'll be right here across from the residential development on 421. There also will ultimately be an access point right across from Interactive Academy with the potential for a light there. There's also an access point approved as part of the PUD on Willow Road right here.
Are those to the housing or the commercial?
Both. They're to the housing because it's gated. That's to the housing. As far as to the commercial, you'll have an access here and an access here, 2 accesses.
So all the entrances to the residential portion will be gated?
Yes.
And then there'll be how many of those?
There would be a gate up in this area right in here. There would be a gate in this area here and a gate on 421 right here.
And then for emergency vehicles, what is their access point?
Their access point is at every one of those gates.
So the gates all will be manned?
No. Well, more than likely, the main gate, once the development proceeds on, will be manned. But most of these, what we always do, like in Bridgewater as well as Chatham Hills, we provide knock boxes and that type thing where they can get in at any point in time, emergency. Because we need that for police, fire, ambulance, everything. So we set that all up and arrange all of that with all those agencies.
But there's no access back to Turkey Foot, back on the west side?
No.
But there is trail access?
Yes, there's trail access to Turkey Foot, and as far as on the trail system, what we're also working on there, and we'll have there, is, and we've worked with your police and fire on that, having emergency vehicle access, not your heavy equipment, but your smaller emergency vehicles for any emergencies on Turkey Foot or Holiday or future trails there.
Are the trail access points gated?
No.
Is Larry talking? I had the same set of concerns you had about reading all the waivers. I read and I read and I marked and I marked. Then after working with Wayne on some of these things, I realized that the way these things proceed, I wasn't as concerned as I had been when I was reading without that kind of knowledge. A lot of things, it seems, the waivers will improve what we would have had they not asked for the waiver. So that kind of, I'm not as concerned about that as I was. I'm not an engineer, so I don't delve into it like you guys do and you as a builder are used to. I have been in some of their developments, and what they promised to do, it appears to me they have done, and more and better. So with my lack of engineering knowledge, but also my viewing of what they have done and how well they have done and what the communities look like, I'm probably not as worried about that as you guys are, but I understand that. That's all I wanted to say.
All right.
Maintenance crews for the golf course, superintendents, all the supporting staff, what entrance would they be using for?
They would be using the far commercial entrance to the north here.
From the north there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what we do is we will build, when that time comes, we'll build aesthetically, beautiful buildings for that. If you go to Bridgewater, the maintenance building is right next to the banquet room. It's also right next to the main entryway. You would never know it was a maintenance building.
And then our bridge that I guess the county's spending money, someone's spending money to replace. Is that being used in any fashion in this project, or is this just where we're replacing a bridge as a county, or, I mean, is that bridge ever going to see traffic again?
Bridge is definitely going to see, definitely is a major part of our trail system. As far as the bicycling and walking paths and all that is all definitely part of that. It's a major part. We were asked early on whether, in the replacement of the bridge, whether to do it similar to what was there or to do it more institutional. We said, no, definitely what was there. It's it's an iconic, part of Zionsville. We wanted to see that being redone.
All right. So but it's not intended for any vehicular traffic at this time, sort of golf carts or something like that?
Well, it could be used for golf carts, yes.
Okay,
It could be used
not
for
cars?
emergency vehicles, emergency type vehicles and that type thing.
If I can jump in on that, this morning the Boone County Commissioners awarded the bid and signed the contract for the reconstruction of the bridge, and it will be to vehicular standards exactly as it was before it was destroyed.
No, it's not going to have another vehicle.
It will. There's some homes still on the east side of Eagle Creek that once the bridge is constructed will have full vehicular access to the
I didn't know if
west.
there were still some homes. I guess there are still, I'm sorry.
Yes. And they will have full vehicular access to the west across Eagle Creek.
Gotcha.
So then those homes are connected into the subdivision where?
Those homes connected to the subdivision by coming in the main gate, the main entrance here, coming all the way to here, and then we've dedicated an area here that goes right onto their access road. So they're very pleased because obviously they're going to have asphalt and being maintained and so forth versus the gravel road. So that was one of the major things we discussed it going through Plan Commission and zoning was making sure that they would always have access to it. So we will construct this in a manner that they will always have access, even during construction, for police and fire purposes.
And isn't that also where the bridge is?
Yes, the bridge is also there. Yeah, to the west of it. These homes are to the east of the bridge. Okay. And you had a question a while ago in regards to the trail along 421. We have already committed to that the trail will go along 421, but in our PUD, we committed that as these sections are developed, that trail would then go in on those sections. Same thing with the commercial here. But we've committed we will do that the entire way.
I understand, but I just don't see it on the drawings.
It's not on the drawings at this stage.
Well, that is
not doing it here at this stage.
You're not going to do it as part of the entry?
We are doing a part of the entry, and we had that on,
Am I just missing it?
yeah, we're doing it as part of the entry. So this trail will eventually go south on 421. What we're doing, as I mentioned earlier, is we're actually, rather than tearing all 30 feet of trees out along here, we're actually bringing this in. It's a beautiful, a creek area through there, and it'll be a really neat walking, pedestrian bike trail, and then continuing on 421.
But it's not on the drawings you presented us, which
Yes,
is my,
oh, the red.
I'm looking at the type drawing, Exhibit 7 of the entry. Is it here somewhere and I just can't find it?
No, I think his red was future.
I don't care.
Yes, the south portion here, we're putting the north portion in as part of this development. The south portion will go in when we're developing this here. Because we didn't have, we're not connecting this, per our PUD, it's in the PUD, that at the time we do the development in this area, we will construct those trails.
Am I missing something?
I guess I would echo Mr. Jones and Mr. Lewis's concerns relative to the list of, documents from the town engineer. And, the response is, we agree it'll be in the next submittal, we agree it'll be in the next submittal. Something of this nature, especially when you took a month off or asked for a month-long continuance, I would have expected that it would have been in this submittal if that's what the time was taken to get that done. I don't think anyone has questioned that this is something that Zionsville wants, but at the same time, we want to make sure we know exactly what we're agreeing to. Is there any more? Go ahead. Yep.
I'd just make one observation, just in knowing how Steve and his development team have worked through this with the town staff, is that from where they started, the list that remains is much smaller than where they started as far as the initial comments. And I think part of the reason you see that it'll be in the next submittal is that these are comments that were received, I think, last Tuesday, and then to make the packet deadline for this meeting, that was a way of indicating that those could be and would be addressed prior to being able to proceed with construction. And so it's taken on, I think, particularly with this first phase, it's taken on, I think, a little more of an iterative process than maybe what any of us would have preferred. But I think we've also got it down to where going forward it's going to be a much more streamlined process. And I think, to Mr. DeLong's point, no showstoppers in any of those comments. I mean, I think we've whittled it down to some corrections on some plans, some additional, potentially additional feedback on a couple of points. But I think, given the work that's been done over the last several weeks, that it is in good shape and meets the requirements of the ordinance. One of the things we're up against too is not your problem, but our problem is that we are trying to get underway to meet the deadlines for the home ramen next year. And I think Steve's up around 305 lot reservations now at last count. And trying to make good on those commitments as well. To Mr. Jones's point too, we do not want to be in a position of having a stop work order relative to anything like a guardhouse or something that is not what was represented. I haven't talked to Mr. Hinkie about this, but perhaps if it's possible that we could, if it was the commission's desire, we could move forward with the plat and the development plan subject to providing whatever additional architectural plans you'd like to see relative to those kind of vertical construction items.
Oh, that's a quick. I don't want to see any verbal. I don't want to hear any verbal.
No, that's.
I
Yeah, that's what I
guess
was
that's my
saying.
concern. I'm looking at this, it says the comment letters based on revised submittal issues and items discussed at the January 24th TAC meeting.
And that's not accurate. The letter is from March 12th.
Okay, I'm reading the letter, but okay. So there was a meeting on January 24th, but it took us till March 12th to get back to you?
No, there's been several back and forth pieces of correspondence relative to that. We took a much larger list. I realize it is still a lengthy list, but it's down to the items that are very addressable at this point, and we believe that have been resolved as subject to staff's final okay.
There's going to be more of these. Our preference is they get resolved.
Understand, I really do. I think it has been the first go-around on this, particularly with some of the issues presented by the golf course development itself. It's added some complexity and taken some additional time.
What are our options as far as acting on this?
Well, I mean, we can.
Approve
move to
or deny?
approve it, deny it, or continue it, I guess is really the options we have.
We certainly move to approve with conditions, subject to resolving the outstanding items, or continue like as the other item that you mentioned.
Right.
And I apologize if I was trying to offer an additional condition to you relative to the architectural plans so that we would have definitive plans. So not a verbal condition, but actually showing additional plans at that point.
And once again, we never did answer the question. Have the guardhouse plans been in front of the police and fire department to make sure they can? I mean, once again, we just heard this with the Baptist Home Group for the BZA, and that was the holdup.
Looking to see if Josh was still here. He's not. Okay.
What are your thoughts, Wayne, on working through this? I mean, do you have a high degree of confidence? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, staff does recognize the complexity of many moving parts. We haven't fully offered the development plan staff report yet for you this evening. Mr. Jones's point about the review date on the letter, this does happen to be a number of revisions into this review. It's been more layers to this than your typical project, but the golf course does function as a standalone review for sake of process, but that as well is incorporated into the development plan that's in front of you this evening. As far as staff's preference, I go back to where I initially offered while there is a number of items, staff has a high degree of confidence in resolution of the totality of the items. We do not view them as complicated. Again, referencing there are a number of them, but in the scale of the overall project, that's where staff falls back and emphasizes its confidence.
Well, for the sake of either moving or not moving, are we ready to make some kind of a motion? If we are, I'll make one.
What is this, it's two separate motions, correct?
Correct, you have two separate petitions in front of you. And the plat also has a waiver.
Right.
So the two we have in front of us are I didn't see them.
Primary plat and the development plan.
Yeah, I'm just ready to make one, not one.
I guess my general concern is I really don't have any interest in approving this guardhouse. I don't like the fact that we've got 22 to 25 items that are open. My other question I had was, whatever happened with the BMP waiver? I see that's dropped out of the exhibits. So once again, that's item number J on the CRIPE. Nope. Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah, I think we determined that that waiver is not required.
So that means you're going to concur with what their request is?
Correct. And not to interrupt, but Mr. Hinkie just reiterated to me that we would be happy to submit detailed plans on the guardhouse and just remove that from the request tonight, make that a separate item.
And that'd be part of the development plan subject, or just, how would we do that?
Well, if the guardhouse was removed from your deliberations this evening, I'm not certain that they're offering to offer that as, at a future plan commission hearing as a separate filing. Is that what you're?
That's right.
Okay.
We could amend our filing to agree to submit a separate sub-part of the development plan dealing with the guardhouse to be heard subsequently by the plan commission before it's built.
Going through the CRIPE response, most of them are not, I mean, it's not points of contention, it's, they agree, they just need to provide either the wording or the document, or, you know, documentation, whatever, so.
Correct. There's a number of points where the simple response is they concur.
Right.
I would say that's what this says.
I just think that since this is the first phase of this and that, you know, we're kind of, I guess, setting a precedent for the rest of the development, I'd like to see these issues resolved before this moves forward. It'd be my opinion that we should continue it to the next meeting.
You want me to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that this gets continued to the next meeting.
Okay, it would take, could we, two separate motions, correct, or can you do them both at once?
Yes, well, if you wanted to do both of them at once, initially the discussion was surrounding the plat petition.
Primary plat, right.
But if you wanted to do both of them at once, you certainly could.
To me, they're interlinked. It's the same set of issues, so I would make a motion that both of them be continued.
Until the April 15th meeting,
Yes.
and would we, public hearing remains open?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion to continue to the April 15th meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By nay?
Nay.
I get a nay too.
All right, so we do not have a 4-1, 4, so the vote for continuance is, I guess it did not pass.
Fails.
Fails. So therefore, I think I see how this is going to end up. All right, so with that, with the vote for continuance failed, then we have to have motions on the items. So is there a motion on the 2019-04 PP, the primary plat?
So that goes down to you guys.
I was gonna say, I was gonna do that first, anyway. I just need help on wording, now that we've done so much discussion. I can word it the way it is here, with the waivers and all that stuff, correct?
If that's your motion,
All right, I
sounds
mean,
like
if
that's
I
where
wanna
you're
do
going.
that, that's what I can do. All right. Then I move that docket 2019-04 PP, petition for primary plat approval with waivers to provide for 165 lots in a planned unit development be approved based on the finding of fact as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion. All in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed by nay?
Nay.
The motion fails to get 4 votes, therefore it's automatically continued to next month, April 15th. We need a motion then on the development plan, 2019-05 DP.
Okay. I move that docket 2019-05- DP Development Plan petition to provide for the development of an 88.368 acre site into 165 lots for residential use, inclusive of improvements associated with the golf course, entry sign, and gatehouse in the planned unit development zoning district be approved with conditions noted in staff report and based upon the findings as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion. Is there any discussions, comments? None? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay?
Nay.
Motion fails to get 4 votes. It's automatically continued to the April 15th meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, guys. Obviously, it's something that everybody wants. As you've heard us, we just want to make sure it's what we get.
Understand. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. All right. This is, all right. Mr., you want this off the record, or so it be? Okay, all right, let us wrap up.
Let's wrap up.
Is there any additional business? Being none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Well, they said the way they talked, they were gonna gate the cemetery, but it sounded like there was gonna be paths and stuff that were gonna be adjacent to it, so I'm not exactly sure.
I mean, I don't know the producers or who tells them what to submit,
Yeah, you need money. Did you hear about the butcher shop 11? About the butcher shop 11? There's 3 of them. We'll see.
Well,
no, I've done crazier stuff.
That's gonna be the roads and stuff like that. That's gonna be probably way more information.
Yeah, come up, bicycle. Yes, sir. We're getting there.
I think I might have
I can see that.
Yeah, sure. But I'm not aware of anybody. I don't think that was on my radar. It's not on my radar.
If they, because those 5 residents.
Of the neighborhood? Well, they should have made that decision a year ago. Well,
No, he was, I went out there.
no, I mean, that might have happened a year ago, I don't remember. I mean, it's busy, lots going on. It's a good thing. We've been here since 7:30.
I was up till midnight. My mom's Friday night this week. My room there is already good.
Going right through the area.
Yeah, just come in here and look at the drawing.
That
bring up years ago. Then after that, it was
I remember that from the last time.
Yeah, so for about 3 months when he's coaching softball all the time, I'll be here.
See you. Okay, signature steps tonight, Wayne.
We have to sign anything. right?
No, because we didn't go anywhere.
We can't sign
No,
that.
you're off scot-free this evening.
Hey, you know what you gotta do? I might get some going.
I want to see $1,300. I want to be able to see what carbon's being presented.
As I was on my way here tonight, knocked out ran off my gravel road, my utility truck.
I knocked it out that way.
It's there every day.
Oh, I know. It's the growth of the schools. But I didn't
And I understand.
I talked to the developer. He's going to run the show.
I'm not gonna be able to do that.
They're still in full activity. Well,
No, you gotta do what you gotta do. I mean, that's why this thing works.
Oh, I know, it's. Rob, this guy works for me.
There are guys that had to do that.
I want to get that done.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Listen, like Sycamore.
Oh, I know that.
So bacon or smoked pork chop? What's your favorite?
I can send them to them or
Bacon or smoked chops or bacon or smoked pork? I'll just bring some smoked chops.
Well, you didn't ask me what I wanted.
Well, but we should be
I've
prepared
already
next
bought
month to
3
speak
bottles.
to the different scenarios. Yeah, there is no.
I know a guy who smokes his own, he makes his own bacon.
Well, there needs to be ways for this to
Oh,
go around the village.
I've been doing that for years. How do you get
People out on
It takes, the way I do mine takes 14 days.
the road out there.
And I use honey to keep it alive, sticking to it.
No, because we didn't do it.
And then that keeps me nice, sugar coated pure on the outside.
There's just so much, there's only so much bandwidth, just like with
That's
that
what-
4 or 5 years.
Trico. There's only so much bandwidth. Luckily, we're having a call on that with the RDC, because I had said, hey, do you guys want this on your agenda for Monday night? And they're like, no, not if we can just agree to it, and so we're gonna call
I'll
tomorrow.
have to
So
tell
I,
Bill that he's tried everything.
with Wade and Sanjay again, so
It's
hopefully
about
we can
2/3
get
peach and 1/3 hickory.
to resolution.
Well, I think Liz said they're okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
Okay. If you smell peach, would you get it fresh? I mean, it smells sweet.
I'd have to try.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah, I ordered, there's a website called Fruit O Wood.
Okay.
FruitAWOOD.
Check it out.
And you, I mean, they sell probably 30 different
I'll
varieties.
have to tell Bill that. He goes down 71st Street to get it.
All right, good job. See you.
I can see how that thing is going. That thing is easy to see which way it's going. This thing should go back, because it's like
Of course we can. But we got to tolerance for me saying that was 5 pages. That's the most you've ever let staff stick their neck out. And we appreciate that. Because it's like, yeah, thanks, staff. We'll take it from here. But to George's point, he's like, why am I seeing these details? Don't you guys have you know, we come together. So, because they're the masters.
Thanks. Okay. All right, good night. Good night. It'll get done. All right, see you later. Thanks.
Sure, thanks.
See ya.